congratulate for choosing the title of this summit, Impact, AI Impact, because the world was busy in declarations and summit around the world. If you see, there was a competition in doing the summits, but this is an impact summit. And also this impact for, not for the selected, but for all, the 8 billion people almost on the planet. So it's inclusive concept of this summit, which I really appreciate and like. The second thing I want to say that India, third largest economy in terms of PPP, but remember that it's not today the size of the economy which matters. What you will be tomorrow. If you look at the US GDP per capita income and the size of the economy, 30 trillion. If you look at the European Union, 500 billion, 20 trillion size economy. And if you extrapolate the size of Indian economy by European standard, around 70 trillion plus the potential. By American standard, almost 170 trillion, even more than the current size of global economy, 120 trillion. So what I'm talking about is not for today's Indias, but for Indias of tomorrow, the future of India. The future of AI will be drafted and created by these numbers. Where is 170 trillion? Where is this 70 trillion? And that's where I look into it. The second point, coming to the frugal innovations, DPI and everything, you see the Western models are great. There is a competition on the numbers of the parameters on which the system has been trained. Billion, trillions, if you sign, everybody is claiming, which is fine for the accuracy point of view. But what you need for your country, because these models were created solving to a problem in a particular context, trained on a data in a particular context. India is a different country, complex, geographical locations, languages, different level of literacy and education. So you need a very different approach. And India has demonstrated in the past. If you look at the DPI, if you look at the digital payment revolution, before that we were struggling. Rest of the world, developed economy, is still a struggle. If I go to many of the advanced economies, it's so hard to make the payment for using the system. But India's DPI, payment revolution, has brought in new dimensions to development using the digital technologies. And that's where I see a lot of hope that how the backbone infrastructure created by India in the form of DPI could be a great enabler. India has already made a great move in terms of making the data sets available for doing the experimentation, for doing the testings and trainings. And India has also come with the BHASNI. So if you combine the existing sets which India has created with the agentic approaches to this one, I think India has its own indigenous model. You can use it, you can use its regional compute, you can use its data sets and have an indigenous India-driven model. The only other approach I will suggest and advocate is that you have a different India in terms of the level of education. You have the largest higher educational system in the world competing with the China. So how do you use 40 million higher educational institutions? How do you convert them into the creator rather than being users? And then the bottom-up approach, which we are doing with the Intel AI Chopal. How do you engage who don't know the language? How do you make them the creator using breaking the barrier of language, using the voice-driven systems? So I think these are the few ways of creating a system which could be truly inclusive for the people, for the India, as well as for the global South, without facing the barrier of resources which many countries are facing. Thank you, and over to you.
Great, thanks Suresh, really useful. Santosh, I'll come to you on this skilling question. I think really, important point that we should talk about education and talent. But Navina, if I can come to you next, and maybe two questions, right? One is, I think, just bouncing off what kind of Suresh said about the need for underlying infrastructure, this backbone that we're talking about. And we often think about infrastructure in the hardware sense, right? It's pipes, it's cables, it's data centers, it's ships. I want to ask you about governance as architecture or governance as infrastructure. You do a lot of work, obviously, in this space. So if you can talk through why you think having good, robust governance architecture or infrastructure is important as we scale. And two, if I can ask you, just going back to this point about optimization, resources, frugality from an India perspective. One point we hear often is that when it comes to governance, risk, and compliance, because India often adopts kind of global models, the compliance costs with this are very high. We don't understand these models. We don't know how to, build compliance systems around it. So we're essentially outsourcing these costs, right? So would you then suggest that India in some way develop these governance mechanisms themselves internally, in-house, so that these costs drop? And is there a model that you would suggest or an approach that you would suggest to do that?
So first and foremost, so happy to be back in Delhi. It's been a few years, so really excited to be here. And what you're asking me actually is going to be a very, very long conversation because there's an assumption, and as I was hearing all the panelists, there was an assumption that this innovation just magically would work, and it actually does not. Because intentionally, you have to think about how do you embed trust in these AI systems. And trust in these AI systems is not just a compliance exercise. It actually is thinking about what AI is and what it does. And let me break that down for you. So especially as, for the what's happening in the AI landscape and what's happening in India is right now, India is a consumer of some of the large frontier models. And when you are in that consumer state, what ends up happening is you're dependent on a lot of third-party vendors, you're dependent a lot on third-party foundation models. You actually don't have a good visibility into what goes into the AI supply chain. And similar to what we saw in the software bill of materials, it is complex. So unless you understand what is within your AI systems, how these models are built, what data they are trained on, what is potential impact of these systems, it's very difficult to say whether you can trust these innovations. So, I always encourage the builders to think about the consequences of how they're adopting third party. But the second thing is what AI does is equally important. So as we are talking about the consequential population, 1.4 billion people, you have to really think about, is this AI system actually going to work for this very diverse set of individuals? And I think that's where the opportunity for India lies. So I hear you don't have any ask from the policymakers, and I think I have a big ask from the policymakers and builders here that if you're going to think about governance and trustworthiness as the last step in building AI, I think India will not have the opportunity to win in this AI arms race, which is happening. I think the way India is going to lead is by focusing on trustworthy AI principles, which are all about thinking about the quality of these systems, reliability of these systems, how do you scientifically measure trust, but also how do you make it work for the massive population that exists in India. And so when we think about shift from being a consumer to now becoming a creator, first and foremost, how do you actually embed governance from the onset as you're building these systems, really thinking through who's going to be impacted and how these systems are getting built. Secondly, unpacking the supply chain, because again, in AI, the supply chain has gotten very complex. You might be using a customer service chatbot, which is now powered by 3 other different vendors, 4 different foundation model providers, and you have zero clue into how these systems have been developed and how they've been tested. So there's a lot of black box nature that is getting shifted to you. And then the third thing, which is really critical as we think about this, is just the impact. Like, do you actually have the right benchmarks and evaluation methodologies? Because again, what has worked in the Western world, even if you think about fairness benchmarks, unfortunately, that does not account for what's happening in India. So when I think about India's opportunity is really around leading with trustworthy AI, because guess what? The priorities, the demographics, the economics in Western world don't apply to India. And just making AI work, I don't think is going to work. What works is making trusted AI work for India.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Navina. Look, really powerful. Embed governance. It's not an afterthought. Start with that right up front. So, I'm just going to hold that skilling question, the education question for a bit, because I want to get Pratyush into exactly what Navina just said, right? Benchmarks, evals, really important. I want you to talk a little bit about what that means from a multilingual point of view, right? You're building these very powerful systems that have, multilingual capabilities. Accuracy, fairness, when it comes to linguistic capabilities is, something that, again, is sometimes thought of as an afterthought, right? So one, why is this important to think about fairness, accuracy, reliability, performance when it comes to multilingual capabilities? And 2, what more do you need to be able to make these benchmarks work, right? You need better data infrastructure, you need evaluation data sets. What more do you need to make that happen?
um, I mean, if you look at a technology like how a phone works, right? We've always focused on ensuring that it is very close to how users will actually use it. But those are afterthoughts that people put into design. With large language models, the interface between us and these models is everyday language. So by definition, they are very humanized in some sense. There's more work that needs to be done on the engineering side to ensure that it is actually gets more and more humanized, but I hope all of you are experiencing it. You're talking to one of these models, you're feeling you're talking to a coworker and actually getting things done. Now, that is a plus side. The negative side to that is what is humanizing varies from people to people. What somebody in a village in Maharashtra feels versus what somebody feels in Western Europe or in Bay Area would be very different. So there needs to be a constant effort to create benchmarks which capture the subjective experience of people using these things, right? And this involves personal signatures like my voice. Does it work with my voice, my language, my context, my vocabulary, etc. Right? So there is a nuance to be able to judge a system is working well, especially when we intend it to be humanizing across the variety of cultural contexts. But I think this is something that is happening, and I just want to put in perspective that AI technologies over the last 5 years have become far more inclusive than probably the last 20 years, right? These things are rapidly improving. Providing support for languages is rapidly coming through. And wherever there is focus, we can improve these systems. I personally feel that the most fair thing to do is to make it available to all, right? And not gate it with too many things. You want to make it accessible to people, and you want to make everybody builders of this technology, right? The interesting thing is now, I mean, in fact, you can all imagine it, in few years, the gap between who is a builder and who is a user will slowly diminish, right? And our job, at least my job, and I'm sure many people across the world have the same mission, we want to make this technology available to all, right? And the faster you can do, the better it is, because it is actually a value add for each country, each company, each community, each person. It's a value add. And then once it diffuses, having the voice so that people can come back and tell what is not working and improving on that is something that we should do, like any other good engineer would do. Right?
Yeah, great. So lots of interesting points. I'm just going to pause for a second because I was just informed that the Honorable Minister of State is just going to arrive. We'll do a short keynote from him and then we'll resume the panel. In this way. Should we pause or continue? Maybe if I can just, Pratish, follow with one specific thing till we wait for the Minister of State to come in. Look, there's a discussion right now. It's a global AI summit. They're trying to, build standards and, develop benchmarks in evals at a global level. This is something that the Prime Minister once done. On this question of fairness, accuracy of linguistic content, would you be willing to sign on to some, commitments, voluntary commitments of that nature? Just a short yes or no. Maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what every model builder would do. Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Happy to hear that. Namaste, sir. So please, yes, you're on time. Please, if I can just request you to take your seat, sir. Yes. It's my real honor and privilege to welcome Honorable Minister of State, Mr. Jitin Prasada, Minister of State for both Commerce and Industry and Electronics and IT. Sir, thank you so much for joining us, sir. We have just been having a very rich discussion about what it will take for India to be from a consumer to a creator. And so we have on this panel really esteemed set of speakers across different layers of the value chain. So I wanted to just first welcome you and acknowledge your presence here, sir. I think there's some photos being taken. But sir, if I can now just request you to maybe say a few words, sir, where obviously it's the first day, inaugural day of the summit. If you'd like to just share a few words.
Thank you. A very good morning. I'm very glad that I have got this opportunity to speak to you, and this is one of my first sessions here at the beginning of the AI Impact Summit. So not only do I welcome you, this is a big event and a defining moment in India's history as far as the tech transformation is going. So we're all very privileged. In fact, all of us should be very privileged to see that the AI Impact Summit is kicking off, and it's truly historic in terms of the response. And I hope to see the outcomes during the next course of the week, where the whole world is descending, and India being that promised land where the new trajectory of artificial intelligence will kick off. And with me here is Santosh Vishwanathan, Mr. Pratyush Kumar, Navrina Singh, Suresh Yadav, Amlan Mohanty, who's our moderator and has been telling us that a very interesting discussion was happening on the way forward, the next leap. What is it?
Consumers to creator.
Which I missed out on because I wouldn't want to hear what's going on and figure out from these experts as to what they have to say. Because after all, it's about all of us. It's not only about government who makes policies, but about every stakeholder, from the industry to our startups, to our young, to our innovators, to our researchers. And every person has a stake and a skin in the game. And to be truly successful and to make India that AI service provider for the world, we all have to chip in and contribute in whichever fashion you can. As part of the government, I can tell you, this is a very agile government. It listens, it fine-tunes its policies, programs, according to the need of the hour, the situations that demand, and the trajectory and the speed and scale of what India is looking at. And that's what we have to offer to the world. We've got the maximum AI skill penetration. We've gone ahead with the policy of ensuring not to overregulate, but so that innovation thrives. We are ensuring that our GPU access is made available as far as possible at a cheapest cost, so that especially our young, our startups and our future generations who have the best minds and design capabilities, they can take use of this high cost of compute and design models. And we are not looking at and competing with the big models. We are looking at scalable models which are which have impact within our country and within the specifics of the models, which show impact on a particular sector, a particular region, a particular community, a particular field. And that's where the India focus lies, where we've rightly named it as the India Impact Summit, from action to impact, from Paris to India, which just goes to show that the focus now is on making AI and that technology available to all. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji says, that we want to democratize technology, but it's not only about access to technology. Now we have to go deeper and beyond access and make sure we have scalable solutions in every aspect. And with a young population, with a great skill force, with the great talent capital of the world that we call ourselves, I think we are rightly positioned. And when we do these kind of events, where the whole world descends, the interaction, the exchange of ideas, the best practices, and what India has to offer will truly showcase to the world that India has arrived on the tech space, and we are here to charter the course and bridge that digital divide, which was there earlier in other occasions as far as the internet goes. But as far as AI and its diffusion and its use is concerned, India under Prime Minister Modi is that voice of that global south, which will ensure that there is no have and have-nots. We will ensure that everybody, starting from the bottom up, especially for the global south sensitivities, are factored in the way that AI discourse does take place in the future. So I think I won't take much of your time, and I wish you all the best, and I want to hear a bit of what our experts have to say, so that before I head to the next session. Thank you so much.
So thank you Thank you so much for those remarks. I have to say, it really resonated with what we've heard on the panel so far. And if I may, just in a few minutes, share kind of a little bit of what we've heard so far. I think one, so the point you were making about the very clear strategic objectives for India's AI strategy that you outlined, right, around inclusivity, making sure that AI is accessible to all, is something that everybody on this panel agreed with. So it's really about making AI available at population scale. And for that, we need scalable solutions. So I think it's really about how do we ensure that India has the capacity to develop these scalable solutions. DPI has come up often, the use of Aadhaar, UPI, of course, but perhaps new models to be able to build those scalable solutions in the AI context is perhaps what the next step would look like. You'll be happy to hear, sir, that we were asked very specifically, is there any other support that some of these people building in India need from the government? And honestly, we heard, at least on this panel, that you're already providing access to compute, capital, talent, market access. So at this point, at least, there wasn't too much on the builder side. But I have to say, we heard from Navina, which said the one thing perhaps she would make a request from the government is to think about governance and trust from the ground up. So think about embedding governance into the system. So that was one. And two, just maybe one other point from Pratyush that perhaps was a slight deviation from what you were saying is, of course, you're talking about small models and the importance of frugal innovation. That has been a very clear strategic goal. But we did hear from Pratyush that he believes, at least, that India needs to do both. Optimize for resources, approach frugal innovation, but also compete with global models. And you can do both. So I'll just pause there, sir, if you had any remarks, any comments, any observations beyond that, and also if you want to share a little bit about how this all comes together in the course of the summit and what you expect from the leaders' declaration as well.
I think we hear some of their views.
Okay. I think we'll hear their views. Sure, sir. So I think we've just been requested for one photo now, if that's okay.
We'll do it later.
Listen. Okay. So then, if I can just maybe go to one question.
From Navrina, what she had to say about what government policies.
Absolutely. No, thank you. I think you said something which is so consequential, that India really not only has the opportunity to impact global south, but also set the stage for what trusted AI looks at the global scale. So the comment that I made previously around governance, which by the way is not just regulation, because I think we should not just focus on regulatory frameworks. We should really think about what measurable trust means so that AI can work for everybody. And that basically spans not only thinking about how India has an opportunity to create very sector-specific standards, but also the ability to create contextual large language models rather than just large language models, which, by the way, won't work for India. And I think I think at India have such a unique opportunity to lead the global stage with the focus on context as well as focus on measurable trust.
So there's one other issue that's come up often, I think, which is really about education. And there are people on this panel, of course, who are working, building partnerships around really skilling from the ground up India's, obviously, young population. So Santosh, if I can come to you for this question that I've been holding on to, which I think is really important, right? In this context of ensuring that India goes up the value chain, right, from being a consumer to a creator, how are you thinking about skilling and education and talent development? We've heard often on this panel is we need to start thinking less about operating and more about building. What does that mean from a skilling and an education point of view?
Yeah, so if I have to step back and see what was the biggest benefit that UPI gave us, was not just enabling transactions, it really enabled a lot of small businesses, small sectors to start to come into this economy and participate in this economy in a meaningful way, right? So you had a technology that was applied in solving payment problems or payment transaction problems. It aided to building finances, it aided to getting capital, it aided to data benefiting them, right? The same way, we got to go and say, AI just does not become a tool where we're just chatting with it or engaging with it. That's one aspect of it. But how can it go back and change fundamental ways in which we do things in this society, right? Education is one of those sectors. It's 200-year-old system that has been built. It is built for the industrial age, and I think it's slowly adapting to the information age. So we have this amazing ability to go back and rethink the way education needs to be done, where it's not a one-way flow, it's not a fixed curriculum flow, it's a flow where a student truly learns in its own way, in a way that best benefits their own skills, right? So that, I think, is an absolutely amazing opportunity where AI can really go fuel a change in the whole system. And I know that this is a touchy topic, right? If you go and talk about the education system, there's so much goodness of the education system because it created people like me and everybody else around the world. But I also think that this is the moment where it can definitely go and change and start to think of skills in a very different way.
Yeah, thanks, Santosh. Suresh?
Education is something that the government is at the moment contemplating as to how to go about it. And we'll be looking at ideas in the sense of, it's not only inculcating it in the curriculum, because you have to do it now. And if you don't, you're going to miss the bus, because the next 5, 10 years, you might be a leader at the moment. India might be at the cutting edge at the moment. But if we don't gear up for the future, we'll be left out, and our new young people will not be that capable enough to handle what's evolving in this sector. So that's one area of concern. But it's not only about inculcating it in a curriculum or taking it as a subject. It's about the holistic 600 million people who are young, the demographics of India. They all need to be educated in whatever form they need to, starting from schools to higher universities to people who are venturing out in the tech world. So this issue is of critical importance, and I think we need some outcomes on this as to how to go about it to ensure that we maintain the edge and our future workforces are ready to handle what lies in store for them. So I think I'll have to move to the next thing, but I wish you all the best and hope this discussion continues. I'm looking forward for the outcomes and so that we formulate the policies for the way ahead, and we see some concrete outcomes from this. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Can I request one photograph?
Yeah.
Can we have a round of applause for the Honorable Minister of State, please? So just a note to say, we'll continue the panel. We have about 10 minutes left, so I just want to get to a couple more questions, which I think has been a really interesting panel. And of course, I encourage any of you to respond to anything that the Minister of State has said. But Suresh, if I can just come to you on, I think, another important strategic point, right, which is, this entire discussion we're having about moving from consumer to creator really is about India rising up the value chain. But it's not just relevant to India, it's relevant for any country, right? A global South country. So if you can just pan out a little bit and think about the global South context as a whole, you can think about AI as a tool, you can think about AI as a service. Can you talk to me a little bit about what it might be to reimagine AI as a nation-building tool? I don't know, I'm just putting this out there, but is there a way, because you talked about, as it being a backbone infrastructure layer, but that only means that it's serving some larger goal, and that could be nation building. So if you'd like to share any comments on that.
Thank you so much for this fantastic question. Let me say that the current context, the creators of the so-called the existing models, they're all pushing the countries to be the users. And that's where I like this topic very much, from user to creators. That's the interest, that's the model. Now, countries like India or any countries in similar position which are positioning, looking for a development and have a goal to become a developed nation by 2047, what should be their approach? And before I further dive, let me also caution one thing, that when the West develops a model, there are no governance standards, there are no risk frameworks, they develop and it goes to the market, to the global market. But when the global South will start developing, a lot of new standards, a lot of new barriers will come. So that is where the governments have to be cautious, that which standards developed by whom, are you part of the process of developing that standards? So development standards, any standards set by the others should not be a hindrance in creating new product and solution for your developmental needs. If you look at the climate, if you look into the trade, everywhere the same thing happened. So the developing country has to be very cautious, be on the table that where and how it should be used. Now coming back to the other one, the AI is a transformative technology, which is no doubt, there is no dispute about that. How do you use? Developed countries want to use in the context of, because they have an aging population, they don't have young people, so their requirements are very different. If you look at India, I mean, the largest higher education ecosystem, large number of young people, millions of people entering the job market. The requirement of such countries are entirely different than the West. So how do you engage them? How do you create a system which empowers them, which them mainstream them into the national development journey? And that's where the large models and the small models should not be seen as a competition or the choice, but a blend. India, if you have a small models where you can have trained models on health, agriculture, where even a farmer can take a mobile phone like they do the payment for to the vendors. They just go to the crops, see the disease of the crop. They can see the satellite monitoring and the state of the health of the soil. So that kind of empowerment we need for a country like India, which grounds these solutions for the people level and not necessarily at the other level. The other point that within the government, if you look around the world, everybody talk about the silos in the government, but if you have a data which enables the application, build up the systems, it allowed you to operate within your departments, one government. Truly it empowers you to make it one government, and that's where the decision making is faster. The decision making is truly based on the evidence. So I think grounding the solutions based on the reality, based on the evidence, and live data for decision making processes, and creating an opportunity for entrepreneurs, for the young people, is something I will advocate for all the developing countries, and be mindful of our very intrinsic grounded development journey, not guided by, if you look at the India journey, as I said in the beginning, it has been its own journey. Organic growth India has so not copied. Even our constitution is not copied, it's a blend. So India's model has to be the blend of the model, which addresses the concerns of India, which addresses the concerns of the Indian people, different literacy level, different languages, which I talked about. India has all the ingredients. Now the only question is to bring them all together and create something which is beneficial for India, which is beneficial for global South. I was very happy to hear from Honorable Minister that India is not only developing the solution for India, but for the global South as the true leaders for this century. So thank you very much, and over to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Suresh. Look, I think I really appreciate this development focus. It's been very clear that India's strategy has been, and for the global South, is a very focused approach around development, around inclusive development. But I think what I heard from you is not that think about development as a goal, but also as a process. Contribute to the process of development, build, develop, think about standards development, right, and contribute to that process. So I think that's great. I'm just taking a look at time. I think, we have about less than 8 minutes left. We have 4 panelists, so I just want to spend maybe the last few minutes just getting, your thoughts, one by one on what your hopes and kind of wishes are for this summit, right? We're at the day 0 or day 1, how you want to look at it of the summit. By Friday, we'll have or Thursday evening, we'll have a leader summit, a leader statement, a Delhi declaration that brings all of these ideas together. So if I can just start maybe with you, Navina, because, you've been very clear and forceful about the importance of trust and governance. I was just on the drive here, I saw there were these flyers about how India takes, ethical, responsible AI very seriously. What would a good outcome for you from this summit look like from a trust and governance perspective? Just in a minute and a half.
Absolutely. So I think it's very focused on 3 core things. One is, if you think about, again, context matters. So, we got an opportunity to meet with Professor Sood, who is the science advisor to Prime Minister Modi. And one of the key things is the AI governance framework that India has put forth, which is really focused on techno-legal approach, is really fascinating because it's so much grounded in context. So I would say the goal is India should not just build AI. I think India should build AI responsibly, and that's going to become the blueprint for the rest of the world. The second is around AI literacy. I think we've been talking a lot about just unleash AI on education systems, unleash AI on builders. I really would suggest that unleashing needs to include what is governance, what is trustworthiness, what is fairness, what is compliance, what is reliability, and all these core concepts. It's not just about building, but how do we actually build with the outcomes in mind? That's really critical. And then the third thing is capital, because if you look at just across the world, less than 0.001% of capital right now is going into trustworthy AI solutions. So if you compare to the amount of capital going into frontier model development is billions of dollars, but if you look at how much is going into actually measurable trust standards, coming up with the right guardrails, as I mentioned, it's miniature. So I would really encourage the Indian VC ecosystem and the startup ecosystem to invest much more heavily in that.
Okay, so build responsible AI, think about education around these principles of reliability, safety, and so on. Pratyush, so at this summit, it's a global summit. You know, you're doing some great work building foundation models in India for the world. You also have people from outside of India who are at the frontier, you know, Google, Anthropic, OpenAI here. You know, as you see them on stage with the Prime Minister, how are you thinking about both competition and collaboration? And in the context of this largest summit and outcomes, what would be good for you?
I know the geopolitical situation is a bit tipsy, and we are talking a lot about countries. But frankly, from an engineer's point of view, what we are in the middle of is an amazing revolution where technology is compounding so fast, and a variety of things are happening. This is a celebration. This Impact Summit is a celebration of that. The flip side to an engineer's delight, I think, is more the impact. I genuinely believe that what India can contribute to the world, right, is the narrative that this should work for everybody, right? The Sarvajana Hitaya, Sarvajana Sukhaya, I think has been well chosen. It has to be for the benefit, for the happiness of everybody, right? India as a country has absorbed everything, right, culturally over millennia, right? We are not at all, I don't think if you ask a common person in India, are you afraid of AI? Their answer would be no, because we know how to deal with things, right? We sort of absorb everything. Whereas there is a little bit of a trepidation globally. What's AI going to do? What's going to be the business model? Who's going to make money, et cetera, right? I think India can give a clarity that the underlying thing is you need human flourishing, right? And how do you focus on that and ensure that technology is available to all? And we do it equitably. We do it in a way in which it becomes a common good, right? I think that narrative India can be a global champion for. And secondly, I think not always keep branding things as, I mean, everybody should be a creator. My sense is that the AI of today makes somebody a creator who 5 years back never even thought of being a creator, right? So I think everybody should be a creator globally. I think we should put that arrow very, very strongly that everybody is on their way up and do it in a way that is globally, equitable to all.
Yeah, great, Pratyush. Happy to hear the engineer's view is the same as any other's view. It's about impact, it's about human flourishing, it's about a human-centric view, and I think we can all agree on that. Santosh, so obviously big focus in India around frugal innovation, around optimization of resources. There are countries who are going to be participating in the summit that have a very different view. They're all guns blazing, you know, it's high capital investment, it's like we want to be Pratyush mentioned the geopolitical kind of competition. There are obviously trying to a potential AI arms race. Do you think this summit could actually provide some progress on this idea that, you know, let's be measured, let's be frugal, or is it each country adopts their own strategy, each their own?
Yeah, I think the first one is the fact that we are, that India is hosting the AI Impact Summit and we are bringing the whole world together itself is a statement. So even before the event, I think we've already made a statement that this is important, and taking a leading edge technology vector and then bringing the world around that in a country like India, I think would have never happened before. Okay, so I think we've already made that first statement. The second part that I think all of us need to think, it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter whether you're in the big countries or the small countries, if you can maximize without derailing the resources of the world, then it's always a good thing for humans, right? So you use less power, you use less water, you build more efficient data centers, you build models that will help everybody and scale everybody. It's always a good thing from the world. So I think that all of this audience coming together and trying to think about what's the most efficient, effective way of doing infrastructure, we've done that, right? 4G scaled in India because we thought of 4G very differently. And we built data costs that are so frugal in nature, but it reached everybody in the same amount of quality. So I don't think that frugal and looking at ways in which we can be efficient is a negative. It's not something that says, oh, you know what, this place is always cheap and looking at cheap things. It's not. I think it's the most effective way where we safeguard our resources so that our future benefits and we don't burn the planet in that process. So I just feel like that's the right outcome, and I think having the best minds in the same spot that can go exchange and interact and learn is a useful vector from this.
Yeah. Thanks, Santosh. And exactly at time, we're at 0, but I do want to give you the last word, Suresh, just maybe last 10, 15 seconds, right? So just bouncing off what Santosh said, India obviously has a very interesting approach. Do you think the rest of the world, especially in the global south, this is a good model to follow? Do you think that at the end of the summit, we'll reach that conclusion? Just in 15, 20 seconds.
So thank you so much. First, let me say that if you see the global tension around the world, the underlying theme is the AI tensions. There is those who will control the AI will control who is the superpower economically by 2050. There is a prediction who will be number one, number two, number three. The diffusion of AI, the innovation in AI is going to decide 1, 2, 3 slots. So that tension is not going to go away with that. But given that the tension is going to remain, how the global south, how the India as a leader of the global south can position itself. And I think this summit offers a fantastic hope for all the countries in the global south to be the part of the leading process, not only a part of following process. And that's where I see the real impact. And also I see that people talk about human in the loop, but here this summit gives the concept of human in the center. So that's the fundamental shift which I see. And human in the center is going to make responsible AI by action, by impact. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Suresh. Great point to end on. Optimistic note. Maybe, a tagline, human in the center, not human in the loop. Thank you to all of my panelists. If you can just have a round of applause for everyone here for a great discussion. And to all of you for being a very patient, engaged audience. I also want to just thank the organizers, Primus partners, Sunita, Indranuj, Sakshi, for getting us all together for this great session. Thank you, everyone.
Ending the session.
Hi, we request everybody to remain seated. We have another panel starting immediately. Like, there was supposed to be a 5-minute break, but the session overran, so we are starting immediately.